Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Recovery efforts underway in Washington, D.C. following a mid-air collision that killed 67. Plus, the Alberta Premier says Canada should have a border czar to work closely with U.S. And a Tabor woman undergoing cancer treatment says she was moved to a Lethbridge hospital storage room and shares her experience.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. 67 people are confirmed dead following a mid-air collision Wednesday night between an American Airlines passenger plane and a Black Hawk helicopter. 60 passengers and 4 crew were aboard the plane, and 3 soldiers were aboard the training flight on the helicopter before both went crashing into the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. At least 28 bodies were recovered from the river following the accident. There was no immediate confirmed cause of the collision, but officials said flight conditions were clear as the jet arriving from Wichita, Kansas, was making a routine landing at Ronald Reagan National Airport when the helicopter flew into its path. Among the passengers were members of the Skating Club of Boston who were returning from the 2025 U.S. Figure Skating Championships in Wichita. They included teenage figure skaters Jenna Hahn and Spencer Lane, both teens' mothers, and 2 highly regarded Russian-born figure skating coaches.
6 is a horrific number for us, but we're fortunate and grateful it wasn't more than 6. This will have long-reaching impacts for our skating community. The 2 coaches, Zhenya Shishkova and Vadim Nomov, top coaches. They were the 1994 World Pair Champions, and they came to us in 2017, and were very much a part of our building the competitive skating program here at the Skating Club of Boston.
The National Transportation Safety Board says it won't speculate on what may have happened, but plans to issue a preliminary report within 30 days. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh vowed early on Thursday to force a spring election at the end of March, when Parliament is scheduled to return. But even as he doubled down on his pledge to help topple the Liberal government, Singh called on that government to recall Parliament early to work on legislation to prepare for a possible tariff war with the United States. All 3 main opposition parties have said they intend to bring down the government in a confidence vote at the earliest opportunity. Parliament is currently prorogued until March 24th as the Liberals choose a new leader to replace outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. As the threat of 25% tariffs loom over Canada, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says Ottawa should appoint a border czar to work collaboratively with the United States. She told reporters Wednesday that a Canadian border czar would work with American counterpart Tom Homan to crack down on fentanyl and illegal crossings, something U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly said is a major issue. Smith says she has already put a name forward.
A general, whoever it is. We've got lots of retired generals. I had a former retired general be my deputy minister, Paul Winnick. I've volunteered his name up, but that's who I think it should be to show that we're serious. Someone who understands military operations, who understands deployment, who understands the seriousness with which we have to take this issue. So I don't know who the federal government has in mind, but that's the kind of person that we need. We're going to see within 39 days, I think, a change in Prime Minister. And then after that, there may be another change in Prime Minister. I think that's why it needs to have an independent person who, with any luck, would be able to withstand changes of government so that we are able to seamlessly ensure that we can work with the Americans on this.
Smith said her government invited American network Fox News to the Coutts border crossing to help demonstrate Alberta's efforts to beef up security. She also says she's pleased the federal government is using Black Hawk helicopters for the RCMP to patrol the border. Patrols recently started in Manitoba and began Wednesday in Alberta. Well, dozens of Alberta scientists, doctors, and researchers have penned an open letter calling on the Alberta government to reject the recommendations contained in its recently released pandemic response report. The group, including experts in infectious disease, pediatrics, virology, and immunology, says its essential government policies are based on well-established scientific evidence, and it claims the task force misrepresents the data. The 269-page report released publicly without notice last Friday was done by a government-appointed panel and calls for limits on COVID-19 vaccines and for health professionals not to be punished for promoting alternative treatments. Speaking to reporters Wednesday, Premier Smith said critics of the $2 million review are trying to control the narrative, and she said that she doesn't want to see, quote, contrarian voices shut out when reviewing pandemic response measures. A cancer patient who was admitted at Lethbridge's Chinook Regional Hospital recently says she's shocked from what she describes as a, quote, inhumane experience. Rose Roll shared with BCN her experience as a patient when she was moved from her room during treatment to a hospital storage room. BCN's Landon Hickok has more on the story.
Rose Roll has been fighting cancer for the last 4 years and was going to Chinook Regional Hospital for a standard treatment where she needed to be monitored closely at the hospital. But her recent experience ended up being anything but standard.
It came about kind of sudden, and an AHS staff member had come upstairs to get me, to port me down to get my injection. And on my way out, they said that they were changing my room and I was going to the storage room. When I saw the room, I just almost broke into tears immediately.
Roll was moved to a hospital storage room where she endured 29 hours in what she said was a dirty and dusty room that was without much of the typical necessities.
It's a storage room, and I was napping once, and the staff just barged in, turned on the lights, opened the door, and got whatever they wanted. And, you know, I could have been changing or anything, and I thought it was really an invasion of privacy. There was hardly any room. It was dirty and dusty, and it really, really hit me that I didn't have a washroom or running water. You know, moving from a room that had, you know, probably 15 or 20 things that a normal room would have, to basically the 3 things. They brought me my bed, my eating table, and my nightstand.
Roll says she had to share a bathroom with 2 male patients and that she had significantly less visits from hospital staff, even though her treatment needed consistent checkups to watch for side effects or unpleasant reactions.
Still no communication. I didn't know, like, am I there for 2 hours? Am I there for 6 hours? Are they just waiting for a bed to open? So it was a shocking experience, a real eye-opener.
Eventually, Roll determined that she waited long enough and left the hospital to the initial hesitation from staff.
I felt like it was totally unfair the way they handled it, and I thought it was inhumane.
Alberta Health Services has issued an apology to Roll in a statement that was shared with BCN, adding that staff have now removed the shelving unit and cleaned the room in response. In sections from the same statement, Alberta Health Services said that Chinook Regional Hospital is currently experiencing high patient demand, and the unit in which this patient was being cared for is under a respiratory outbreak. Overcapacity spaces are commonly utilized during periods of high demand to maintain patient care standards. It's an established practice, and we emphasize patients in overcapacity spaces receive safe and appropriate care. I
would just hope that they could utilize the hospital better. And I'm scared to go back to the hospital, actually. It's got a little bit of fear built into me now because I don't know what I would do if it happened again.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Thanks so much, Landon. By the year 2046, 1 in 5 Albertans will be 65 years of age or older. And over the next 10 years, the demand for continuing care in Alberta is projected to grow by 80%, increasing even faster as people live longer and with more complex needs. Alberta's government announced a new provincial continuing care agency, Assisted Living Alberta, as part of the province's health refocusing. Jason Nixon, Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services, made the announcement today.
Assisted Living Alberta will offer Albertans access to a full range of wraparound services from medical and non-medical supports, home care and community supports, to housing and social services and other supports. Through Assisted Living Alberta, we will prioritize addressing a person's complex needs of care rather than focusing on simply providing medical care for a particular diagnosis. Assisted Living Alberta will bring together the medical care that Albertans rely on with the power of the social service organizations and nonprofits that provide support to create true wraparound services based on the needs of each Albertan.
As part of the $3.8 billion Canada-wide early learning and childcare agreement on Thursday, the Alberta government introduced flat monthly parent fees for full-time and part-time licensed childcare. Beginning April 1st, parents with children up to kindergarten age attending full-time licensed daycare facilities and family day home programs will be eligible for just over $326 per month, or roughly $15 a day. Parents needing part-time care will pay $230 per month. This means a family using full-time daycare could save on average $11,000 per child per year. The flat monthly parent fee will replace the child care subsidy program for children attending childcare during regular school hours. The subsidy for children attending out-of-school care will not change. Alberta's government says it wants to increase the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund to at least $250 billion by the year 2050. The trust fund started back in 1976 by Peter Lougheed, and it was created to invest a portion of Alberta's non-renewable resource royalties each year, so the investment interest earned in the fund would reduce the province's reliance on resource revenues. For decades, contributions to the Heritage Fund were limited and investment earnings were spent instead of being reinvested. But on Wednesday, the province announced it's adopting a new plan to grow the Heritage Fund and achieve long-term growth and financial stability for the province.
Many of us know the importance of planning ahead. We all know the value of having a savings account, whether we're actually able to set money aside for it or not. While we manage day-to-day expenses, it's important to know that we are putting money aside for unforeseen expenses, but also for a time when we are retired or potentially lose our income. That's the same motivation at play with our plan for the Heritage Fund. To achieve this, we must prioritize reinvestment of annual earnings that will compound over the long term and achieve meaningful growth year over year.
According to Horner, this year the province expects to bring in approximately $20.3 billion in forecast oil and gas revenues, and this revenue is where they plan to build the Heritage Fund. British Columbia's education minister has fired the entire Victoria School Board in a dispute over a safety plan where the board barred police from schools except in emergencies. Minister Lisa Beer says student safety is at risk in the district, and she has appointed a lone trustee to oversee the district until the next municipal elections set for the fall of 2026. Beer says the appointment is effective immediately, which will clear the way for the completion of a safety plan for the district. She says the government has given the board many opportunities to act, but it has not delivered. If you love the sound of bagpipes, you might get the chance to hear them more often in Lethbridge. The Lethbridge Police Service announced a memorandum of understanding was signed between the service and two local pipe bands to create the Lethbridge Police Service Pipe Band. The Legion Pipe Band and Bridge City Highlanders Pipes and Drums will amalgamate and perform under the LPS umbrella during external and internal ceremonial events.
The band is comprised of police and civilian volunteers who will serve as ambassadors to LPS and continue to promote and grow the traditions of Scottish music in Southern Alberta through performance and instruction. Both the Legion and Bridge City Highlanders bands are well known in our community, and we are looking forward to the many opportunities they will have to continue engaging with our citizens under the auspices of the Lethbridge Police Service.
Tom Wilson of the Legion Pipe Band and Scott Sinclair of Bridge City Highlander Pipes and Drums each said that amongst the challenges of bringing in proper numbers to support events, joining together with the LPS will bring certain stability. Well, more than 120 years of Western Canadian history is now available in a collection digitized by the Kootenai Brown Pioneer Village and the University of Lethbridge. The newly digitized Pincher Creek Echo Collection, formerly known as the Rocky Mountain Echo, covers the period from April 1900 to December of 2023. Jake Cameron, Systems Support Specialist at the University of Lethbridge, explains why it's important to have the digitized collection.
Having this in a digital format, not just available to the people at Kootenai Brown Pioneer Village, but the people of Southern Alberta, the people of Alberta, Canada, and the rest of the world, allows people to find research they may never have found or materials they may never have found anywhere else. And it shows the importance of what's happened in Southern Alberta and the history of Southern Alberta. And that's so valuable to researchers and people who are interested in that history.
Just to see such an incredible resource for the entire province and for Western Canada to be put out and for our museum to be recognized as the progenitor of this entire project, and just for the entire world, for all the inquiries we get that come from overseas and abroad and across Canada, asking inquiries about ancestors and people who were in the area. It just helps our ability to help assist them in their resources and genealogical resources, and to also help authors who are trying to track down quotes or historical factoids and that sort of thing.
Those who wish to access the digitized library, you can check it out at digitallibrary.uleth.ca. Community Conversations is the perfect time for the city to showcase its projects while also receiving feedback from the community. The event also serves as a stage for those looking to educate themselves or simply connect with institutions. Tara Grindle, Communications and Engagement Manager with the City of Lethbridge, explains.
Something a little different is we've staged the projects so the community can understand if it's just launching, and they can give lots of feedback that could still inform the project mid-project, so maybe some decisions have already been made but they could still give some feedback, or if it's at the conclusion of the project, which is mostly we're just informing people then what the feedback was and how we use that for the project. As we get down to like paving roads and the things like that, that gets more technical in what we can and can't do or what the public might be able to give feedback on specifically. But when we're looking at how do we want to grow the city, right? And that's that land use bylaw project, which is huge, is how do we want the city to grow in the future, and that's really where the residents' feedback can have a lot of impact.
Mobility and accessibility station. So this is kind of some of the stuff that we're doing. And so we have a accessibility and mobility group, and a lot of times we get together, we talk about it, and this is kind of tries to represent, you know, some of the stuff we've done in the past in 24 and stuff that we are going to do in 25.
Very attentive, and lots of people want to learn. We've got props here, so what we're essentially doing is we're just going through a deadly bleed simulation, and we're actually letting the community get hands-on so that they can actually stop the bleed. And we're just going through stopping a bleed with the equipment that we have and that they would have access to. Anybody in the public can learn this tool. Like I said, it can be a life-saving tool.
I came here just to see what's around and look for like more volunteer opportunities and talk to the people in the city of Lethbridge. I've found lots of like city development and stuff, and like lots of helpful information about traffic and how they do stop stuff, and yeah.
For more information about Community Conversations, you can be found at getinvolvedlethbridge.ca/community conversations. Well, we exceeded our daily high today, surpassing our expected 9 degrees and getting into those double digits. But we can also expect those temperatures to drop this weekend. I'll be back right away with a 7-day forecast and also a look at weather across the country. Well, guess what? Lethbridge was the hot spot in Canada earlier today. That 9 degrees actually reaching up to 11 degrees. So we got into the double digits there for a while, and much less wind today as well. Only gusts from 40 to 60 kilometers per hour. Much better than what we had yesterday, which was 80 to 90K winds. Now, tomorrow, Friday, we're going to see a forecast fairly similar to today. We're looking at less wind and clear skies and a high of 8 degrees. We'll see if we get higher there tomorrow. Now, Saturday, this is when we're going to see a lot of precipitation. So we are seeing a 60% chance of showers, high of 4 degrees. By Saturday evening, those showers changing into flurries and a massive drop in temperature there, down to minus 20 Saturday night. As we get into Sunday, the daytime high only minus 19, overcast for the most part. And then both Monday and Tuesday, we're seeing that 30% chance of flurries, minus 20 for the high on Monday, minus 17 the expected high on Tuesday, and then minus 8 on Wednesday. So we are about to see a massive drop in temperature. So enjoy these nice pluses for now while we got them. Average high for this time of year, minus 2. Average low, minus 14. 15 was our record high on this day that happened in 1928. And in 1909, minus 38 was the record low for this day. The sun rose this morning at 8:26 and our sun set this evening at 4:52. We're now looking at 9 hours, 16 minutes of daylight, so more sunlight these days. So that's something to definitely celebrate. On the west coast tomorrow, we are seeing a mix of rain showers in the morning before clearing up. Also high winds in Victoria, high of 8 degrees. Now in the Wanda Fuca Strait, expect up to 80 km/h winds. Now there's a low pressure system running down the BC coast. It's bringing with it a mix of wintry weather, including it's supposed to be up to 25 millimeters of rain tomorrow in Vancouver. And then we've got some alerts on the highways as well. So winter storm warnings up to 20 centimeters on the sea to sky highway there up to Merritt and Whistler. 6 for the high in Vancouver. 3 degrees in Edmonton tomorrow with 2 to 4 centimeters of snow expected. Calgary expecting some flurries to clear up by afternoon and dissipating fog as well. So keep that in mind if you are driving into Calgary tomorrow morning, in or out really. Okay, so we're expecting snow and blowing snow in both Saskatoon and Regina tomorrow. Minus 6 for the high in Saskatoon, minus 4 Regina, minus 9 the expected high in Winnipeg. Winnipeg seeing periods of snow and then clearing. And then as we look to Toronto, 70% chance of flurries, could see some showers mixed in with that. 0 for the high of minus 7. And Ottawa tomorrow, also with some flurries there, light snow actually clearing up by noon tomorrow in Montreal with a high of minus 7. As we look to Atlantic Canada, Fredericton expecting 2 centimeters of snow there tomorrow and a high of minus 1. Halifax seeing a mix of sun and cloud, 1 for the high there. Charlottetown, 1 degree as well, and then 1 as well. Look at all these ones here in St. John's. St. John's could see some flurry activity as well as some high winds up to 60K. So there you have it. That is your forecast. Almost half of Canadian exports to the U.S. that could potentially be hit by tariffs come from just 6 industries. Stats Canada says those include oil and gas extraction and refining, auto manufacturing, aluminum, and aerospace. A 25% tariff applied across the board would increase the cost of the top 6 sectors' exports by more than $148 billion. More than 77% of all Canadian exports are sent to the U.S. Walmart Canada says it will spend $6.5 billion over the next 5 years with plans to open dozens of new stores. The retailer says the investment is the largest it's ever made since entering Canada 30 years ago. New stores in Port Credit and Oakville, Ontario are slated to open later this year, with a new distribution center in Vaughan, Ontario also expected in 2025. 3 new stores are expected for Calgary, Edmonton, and Fort McMurray, Alberta by 2027. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 334 points on the day to finish at 25,808. The Dow was up 168 points to 44,882. The S&P 500 was up 31 points to 6071, and the Nasdaq was up 49 points to finish at 19,681. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 50 cents to $73.12 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 9 cents to $3.08 U.S. Gold was up $33.99 to $27.9416 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 77 cents to $31.64 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.57 per bushel, barley is at $6.57, canola is at $14.44, and corn is at $8.51 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was down $2.55 to $204.47. Feeder cattle were up $1.35 to $281.90. Lean Hog's February contract was up 48 cents to $83.90. And the Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 69 cents US.
Recapping one of our top stories, investigators have begun their look into a mid-air collision in Washington, D.C. that killed all 67 people aboard a passenger jet and a military helicopter. The aircraft collided while the jet was on final approach to Reagan National Airport, resulting in America's worst aviation disaster in a generation. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board says it won't speculate on what may have happened, but plans to issue a preliminary report within 30 days. Coming up on Bridge City News after the break, PCN's Paul Arthur talks with author David Horsager, who sheds light on the value of trust in our society. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also check out our website or our YouTube page anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews.
Trust is one of our most valued virtues, isn't it? Unfortunately, we too often see trust broken in today's society. And joining us from Minneapolis, Minnesota to discuss this is Dr. David Horsager. He's the CEO of Trust Edge Leadership Institute and a best-selling author. His latest book being Trust Matters More Than Ever, 40 Proven Tools to Lead Better, Grow Faster, and Build Trust Now. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Paul.
You bet. Yeah, I should put a plug in here for your website as well, davidhorsager.com or trustmattersbook.com. That's where you can get the book. I think it's worth reading for sure. David, why is trust such an important virtue in today's society?
Well, this goes back to my grad work a couple decades ago, and the finding then is true as it is now and is true 2,000 years ago, and that is, I believe, actually a lack of trust is the biggest expense of a person, a product, an organization, a church, the GDP of a country. It's all a trust measurement. So think about it. At the core, if we shift our thinking, we don't have a leadership issue. The reason we follow a lead or not is trust. We don't have a sales issue. The reason people buy has something to do with trust. Learning in a classroom only increases when I trust the content or the teacher or the psychological safety or trust of the room. A marketing message is only amplified when I trust the message more. Innovation, if we think about this, Paul, I got a team here. If they don't trust each other, they won't innovate because someone's scared to share an idea. Diversity, equity, inclusion, the biggest Harvard study shows diversity of almost any kind puts people against each other in some way unless we increase trust. And then we can, gain benefits of different perspectives and those kind of things. So at the core, I believe it's always a trust issue, and we can solve for that. What we've seen is I've had the Admiral of the Navy say we decreased suicide rates. I've had big companies say we dropped attrition by millions of dollars. Wow. I've had people say it tripled their sales. I've had people say it saved their marriage. So when we shift this, and by the way, I'm passionate about it because it's changed me along the way. So the core issue is a trust issue. And by the way, for the believers out there, think about this. You go back, there are two big themes in Scripture. One is trust Him, of course. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and all your understanding, and all your ways acknowledge Him. And then we see, in the Psalms, don't trust in this, trust in this. Don't trust in chariots, don't trust in, the sword, don't trust in princes, don't trust in the name of the Lord my God. And over, there's this theme in Scripture of trusting in Romans 10:11. Anyone who trusts in Him will not be put to shame. And you see in Chronicles, prayers were answered because they trusted, and prosper happened in Proverbs when we trusted Him. And those that trusted Him were blessed in the Psalms and in Proverbs. And so you see this thing of trusting Him. But the overlap of my research happens in the second theme in Scripture, and that is this kind of the Proverbs 12. Where it says, the Lord detests lying lips, but delights in the trustworthy. This is the trustworthiness. This is where, Jethro in Exodus talking to Moses saying, you can't do it all on your own. Come on, you gotta find those that are capable and trustworthy and put them in charge of the thousands and tens and hundreds and tens. And in Nehemiah and 13, you gotta put the trustworthy in charge of the storehouses. And this is our call, I think, as leaders, as believers. The greatest call of leader is and an individual. The call is to be trustworthy, worthy of trust. And that's the second half of my research, actually secular research, but God was talking about all of it way ahead of me. And this 8-pillar framework and how trust is built, it's the same that God's been talking about for years.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear that. Yeah, we could trust in the wrong thing, but we need to trust in the right thing, of course, that being God first and foremost, and we need to be trustworthy. So what happens then to relationships, whether that's in family or work or wherever, once trust is broken?
Well, I mean, everything bad. So, so when trust is broken, you lose faith. But by the way, just so you know, you can be trusted for good or bad. Like if you're late all the time consistently, I will trust you to be late, right? If you thought that when I'm in the room, I'll trust that you'll do that when I'm out of the room. So this 8-pillar framework we can talk about, this is how trust is built. And then the 40 tools in the new book are just simple, quick ways you can build that 8-pillar framework. But that's how trust is built. But of course, I mean, what happens in a country is the GDP goes down. What happens in a church when you lose trust is giving, donations, missionalness goes down because I don't trust that pastor, or I don't trust what they're doing with the money, or I don't trust that they're using it to make disciples or whatever the mission is. Then people stop. They stop being invested. They lose investment of people, both financially and time and effort of the disciples or of the members or of whatever. So in a marriage, marriages that don't have trust, they lead to divorce. Companies that lead to trust, they divide. And I mean, if people see the trust, this was the original research, by the way. Trust was always the leading indicator of all good. So when trust increased in a company, for instance, then attrition went down. Cost, time to get anything done went down. Paul, think about this. Let's get simple without even all the research, right?
Okay.
I can give you the research, like the number one reason people want to work for an organization was not getting paid more in first world countries. It wasn't a more fun work environment with a ping pong table. It was actually trusted leadership, right? But think about it. You think about this, if you have teenagers, or some of the listeners have teenagers like I do, they're going out Friday night with friends.
Yep.
I trust those friends. I don't trust those friends. The biggest stress I have as a parent. You got someone you're on at a company or an organization, and you've got a team. They've got your back. You trust them. You got someone on your team you don't trust. It's the biggest stress you have at work.
So now, and again, we see it so many times in today's society where trust has been broken. And so any thoughts on how to rebuild that trust after it's been broken?
Yep. So the 8-pillar framework, and we may not have time to get through all of it, but I'll just give you a taste of a couple of the pillars. And then under those pillars, in Trust Matters, like I said, one of the cool things about this book, you can get it audio in other ways, but it is really cool visually. It's like tab this. I need to rebuild trust. There's the 10 steps. I need to have healthy accountability. Here's the six steps. You can just look up how do I build trust in conflict? The tips, boom, right in a row, right there. You can just go to that page if you don't. It's almost more of a quick guide and manual for how to build it in that situation. But the 8 pillars are how trust is built globally. And even though we contextualize them, if we're dealing with corruption issues in East Africa or pro sports teams or policing or companies, it always comes down to these 8. So for rebuilding trust, that comes under the 5th pillar, which is commitment. We trust those that are willing to stay committed in the face of adversity. If I don't think you'll stick with me, I won't trust you. We have a big tough thing happen. You're going to jump. I'm not going to trust you, right? So to your point of how do you rebuild trust, the 10 steps are in the book, but I will tell you in this short time together, what it always comes down to, whether you're a big company with an oil spill or you're an individual with a moral failure, if you ever have a chance to rebuild trust, it comes down to one thing. You have to, it's not the apology, by the way. I'm not saying don't apologize to open the door of communication, but you never build trust on the apology. The only way to rebuild trust is to make and keep a new commitment.
Right. So the apology you mentioned there does need to be a proper apology in the sense that you need to take full ownership, right? And you need to make proper amends, right? I mean, things need to be repaid or whatever. That's key. And then out of that,
all of that's part of it. But people think with that, they like, I'm sorry, I'm late. No, you're not. You're late every time. Like, unless we make and keep a new commitment after all the other things are done, you will never rebuild trust.
So there needs to be a 180. A 180, it's a repentance, basically, right, with fruit.
And the other truth of this is the 8 pillars when you're rebuilding trust, you have to amplify them. So for example, the first pillar of the 8 is clarity. People trust the clear and they mistrust or distrust the ambiguous or the overly complex.
Right.
Where I was a professor who I want to complexify something to look smart, whenever I do, I lose clarity, which always loses trust. Clarity wins today, not cleverness.
Right.
Clarity, clarity, clarity. They, instead of saying you have this, we looked at this one person, she had a hair cutting salon. She wanted it to be all really cutesy and fun. So she called it Whispers on Main. Nobody went. Why do you go there?
Because what is that?
Best haircuts by Barb. People came. So clear wins. And you can think about, let's just take that first pillar for anybody. A leader might not be trusted if they're not clear about the vision. A manager might not be trusted if they're not clear about expectations. A teacher might become kind and compassionate, but not trusted if they're not clear about the assignment expectations. So clarity is one pillar. So let's just give a tool. I'll give one of the 9 tools that come under clarity.
Okay.
If you are a leader or a and you want your messages to matter, one quick, simple tool, make sure that message in today's world is MRA. Make sure it is memorable, make sure it's repeatable, and make sure it's actionable. Many organizations we look up, they have values. The only reason to have values or mission or vision is so that people make decisions by them across the organization. Maybe you have a church. If people aren't making decisions in ministries, if they're not making decisions for what they off of these values, then there was no reason to have them.
Right. So the vision's got to be very clear that they can just keep it simple and follow that. Yeah.
And the values too. So, because the vision, the values are the way we do things here. So if they're not memorable, repeatable, and actionable, then it doesn't matter today. And actionable, people often get that wrong. So they say, I've got a value of integrity. What does that mean? Integrity. If you don't have that, you should go to jail. So let's take that and make it actionable. In our space, our value for integrity is being the same. One of the values under integrity is being the same on stage and off.
Yeah.
I once spoke at the biggest conference in our country. I was the least known of the 10 speakers. I was excited to be there. There were big names that everybody would know across North America, I think, except for me. I felt like at the time. And I was excited until I met the person I wanted to meet in the green room. And I noticed he's a whole lot different off stage than he. So in our company, we say everybody's got a stage. It might be Teresa on the phone. It might be Dan when he meets with our certified partners. It might be Heidi when she's talking to the publisher. But it's always we all have a stage, right? So anyway, so that's a way of taking a value and saying, is it mission? Is it memorable, repeatable, and actionable? There are several tips and tools that are simple and actionable like that. If I'll just point out another one, the how strategy. That is the way we've had people triple sales. We've had companies change with that. And that is the way I lost 52 pounds in 5 months. So that's that'll take a little more time to discuss, but it's outlined. It's 4 pages. It shows exactly how to get another level of clarity that gives you hope, not just kind of a goal. So
let me let me just jump in here, just because we're running out of time. But I'd love to hear your thoughts briefly here on what you would say to our political leaders, our media leaders, to our church leaders today. I mean, what needs to change if they want people to trust them?
Well, you have to take a look and put trust as a priority. Trust is actually the core issue. Without ego, I hate it when consultants come in, it's always this, but it is a trust issue. And so if you can increase trust, the biggest cost you have is trust. And the boards I work with, the biggest risk a board of directors or a pastor or a teacher or anybody has is losing trust. So you have to trust. The question you should ask every 90 days is, what's a lack of trust costing our team? That question should be asked instead at your strategic planning every time. What's a lack of trust costing? So I'll give you a little history of trust in 1 minute. The history of trust is this. A long, long time ago, we did not trust for 2 reasons. 1, I didn't know you. You are from that mountain. You speak differently. You look differently. I didn't know you. Number 2 reason I did not trust you is I do know you. I've seen how you act, right?
Right.
So I don't trust you. And then we moved forward and trust became institutionalized. And so we could have the institution of government and have one bad politician, but not lose trust in all. You could have one bad teacher and not lose trust in education. And then in North America, starting especially in the US, institutional trust started to tank about 30 years ago. And so the institution of government until about 1970, about 80% of Americans trusted our government to do basically what was right. Now it's less than 10%.
Wow.
Media, you know this, Paul. We used to have the news, not anymore. You've got your news, you got your news. Where do you get your news? We have this not the news. We have these echo chambers of we don't even know. We used to say we know what you value with your your checkbook and your date book, and now we can say where do you get your news, and we know basically what people value, right?
Got to leave it there because of the clock, but thank you for sharing that, David. Much appreciated. I think there is a lot of truth in that, getting to know individuals one-on-one, and it takes time, and we need to carve out some of that because it's so important. Thanks for your expertise, David. Dr. David Horsager is the author of Trust Matters More Than Ever, 40 Proven Tools to Lead Better, Grow Faster, and Build Trust Now. That's available at davidhorsager.com or trustmattersbook.com. We all want our kids to get a good education, right? To get them prepared for success in life. But some of our kids struggle with learning for various reasons, and extra help is sometimes needed. We want to talk about that a bit today with Jason Kwasny. He's the principal of Palliser Beyond Borders, a school based out of Coaldale, Alberta. So good to have you with us, Jason.
Thanks, Paul. It's good to be here.
You bet. Can you first of all just give us a brief overview of what your school is all about?
Sure. So Palliser Beyond Borders started actually in 2014. We started as an online school. Previous to that, we were considered Pass Plus was the school that some of the people in the Coaldale area will be familiar with, and that was the outreach school here. Over the past 11 years, we've grown sort of away from that outreach model, and we've had more of our students go into the online program. So we offer all the programs and classes that students need to graduate. We are primarily a 9 through 12 school, although we're making some adjustments to our grade levels. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to give students around Alberta and actually around the world opportunities to continue on with the Alberta curriculum and be successful.
Okay. And now I understand some of your students had to interrupt their educational journey. Now maybe they had a medical condition, something like that, mental health challenges, or financial difficulties. Maybe it's a broken family situation, that sort of thing, right? And so they come to you, and what age groups are we talking about? You said grade 9 to 12, right? But is there a limit as to, what's too old to attend, right? So they've had something interrupted, so they're coming back to, get some help here. Are we talking like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds? Where are we at there?
Well, actually, and I'm sure she wouldn't like me to say this, so I won't use any names, but a couple years back, we had a 76-year-old lady that came and finished her high school diploma with us.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
She had left high school early, had went into post-secondary, done a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, but it bothered her. She never had a high school diploma. So we did that. We had an 81-year-old gentleman last year that we helped to finish his high school diploma. So really, when it comes to, the top level, if students are engaged and they're ready to go and they have a desire, we have tons of adult learners that are coming back to upgrade to improve either their stance in life, to improve their education and their post-secondary opportunities, and then we have some just come do it for the love, right? And so it's great.
Wow, I love it. And a part of your approach is to have a lot of flexibility for the students. So are there different methods of teaching and learning that are offered to the kids?
Absolutely. So, with our online programs, we strive for flexibility. We realize that traditional school is great for a lot of things, but for some of our individuals who are working, some of our younger students, although I did say grade 9, we are reducing our grade, not reducing. lowering our grade level to include grade 7 students to match the new high school here in Coaldale. So we'll get some new students, but some of them have difficulties, with sleep, waking up early in the morning, staying up too late. There's a lot of issues that are going on. Students that are working late into the evening are sometimes difficult to get in there. So what we require of our students is essentially, that they have an hour a day a class to put us, or an hour a day per class to invest into their education. And, along with that, we ask them to reach out to their teachers once a week. Now, when they're connecting and when they're putting in that time, that's sort of on their schedule. So we help them to create the schedules. They're driving the bus, I like to say, and we just like to help to give them a map towards success there. So.
Okay, so the times are definitely flexible for sure. And are there any different teaching methods that are used? I mean, some people, I guess, learn more visually. Some, I don't know. There's different ways of learning, right?
We try and give as many opportunities as we can. Accessibility is really important to us. So providing all the content in multiple ways. We use videos. We have live teacher sessions a couple times a week. So students are always welcome to come and connect with their teachers, either in those live sessions or one-on-ones to get really direct help. Tutorials, I like to say, more so than lectures. We have, print-based materials. We use a digital screen for the material, right? But just straight text, videos, audio. Really, we're trying to remove the barriers to instruction, provide the accessibility to the students, provide the flexibility to the students, and then remove the barriers so that they can meet all their educational needs and goals. So.
Right. So for the student-teacher interaction, you mentioned, they can come in person, right? And then there's others that do this online. And so if you're doing it online, can you I guess just meet virtually with via Zoom or whatever, and just connect with the teacher that way, and you both maybe share the screen, and they can go through, okay, here's how this works, and you fire away questions, all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. We have, the tools are out there, right? We have virtual whiteboards so that we can have students, we can be doing math. Math to me, and that was my background, is the hardest one to do with a keyboard, mouse, anything like that, right?
Okay, yeah.
But we have virtual whiteboards and tablets and whatnot that we can write on to make sure that the students are able to see and not just hear what we're demonstrating, what we're talking about. All of my teachers have time during their day to connect one-on-one. So we call that asynchronous time, but it does become synchronous in some case where they're face-to-face with them. But they're responding to emails, communicating with parents. Parents are our number one tool to get their students engaged. We really try and get them on their end, to be asking their students, just like every other teacher, what did you learn today, right? What did you do in school today? And, your teacher reached out and hasn't heard from you in a bit. Can you connect? So my teachers are always connecting with families and students, and that can be a one-on-one 15-minute meeting, talking about Shakespeare and getting really deep into that. And there's so much we can learn about students in that time. So, and then, yes, some students are coming in face-to-face, an hour here, hour there. It's wonderful. So.
Well, that's another question I'm sure people would have is, if you're online and now you're, of course, offering the opportunity to come in person, which I think is fabulous. But any concerns about socialization? I mean, if you're just online, and there's probably some of your students that are, mainly online, right? So any thoughts on the socialization aspect?
You know what? It's interesting, Paul, because I believe that the online gives them the flexibility to socialize in other ways, right? They are out there in their community doing volunteer work, because they are not doing the 9-to-5 school or the 8:30 till 3:30 school. So they're getting out there, they're volunteering, they're working jobs and everything. Within our school, one of our rules is when you're in class, your cameras are on. We want to see you. We want to see your face. We want to make sure that you're seeing your peers and classmates and all the cultural diversity that comes along with the Palliser School.
Okay, so there's that interaction actually when you're online. You're actually part of the class that's, well, depending, I guess, on what time is available for them. Maybe they're working night shift or something, who knows. But you're saying predominantly you're actually doing the class together with those who are in person as well and the others who are online.
Absolutely, right. We with some of our junior high programs, we see our friend or our students that connect afterwards, right? So in the hour breaks between classes, when they're working on homework, they're starting their own Google Meet, and they're having play dates. When we had younger students during the COVID time, going to each other's houses, right? So yeah, it is different. But those opportunities are still there. It's not alone, and that's one of the things we really stress to families is your students will never learn alone with us. So.
Well, that's good. Yeah, we need one another. That's just one of my beliefs anyway. I do better when we've got people around us. And so likewise with support and maybe counseling services that are needed by some of the students by the sounds of it, right? And maybe, just different mental health challenges or, again, family struggles, that sort of thing. I'm assuming that's made available through school counselors, right?
Absolutely, and Palliser has a wonderful team of school counselors. One of their policies, if we can't get a student into some face-to-face counseling in person, is they never provide counseling if the student is at home alone. So we always want to make sure that there's somebody supportive in the event that something goes wrong, but we'll do virtual counseling with students as well, right? Part of our new model with the outreach, sort of with us reinvigorating, is to have a live teacher for outreach students, no matter what class they are taking, no matter what grade, to be able to stop in and get assistance and get instruction face to face. But we also do an intake for these students to review all of their needs. So do they need counseling needs, mental health needs? Is there substance abuse issues? All of those pieces. So we can identify, what services to you put in place for each student, create that calendar so that we know, when to expect them in, and then follow up on those. So if students aren't coming in, which a lot of times they don't, they're committed when they're in the building, but a lot of times the minute they walk out, it slides away, and there's always something better to be doing, right? And so we can follow up with these resources and make them available, and it's really useful. So.
All right. Do you have any success stories you can kind of, share on how the program's been helping kids get back on track?
Absolutely, we have tons. Primarily high schools have those 3-year graduations, that 10, 11, 12 graduation scheme. We have a few students with us right now who are working on year 5 of a graduation plan. So Alberta Education provides funding for 5 years for students. So essentially grades 13 and 14 as well. We have a few students who have been hospitalized and receiving treatment for some fairly significant health concerns. And through flexibility, we'll take a 1-semester course, and we've had that students complete it over the span of a year, sometimes spanning summer, to make sure that, when they're able to work, when they're not receiving the treatments, they're able to engage with their teacher and keep going. And, one of our students will be graduating this year, and he's been with us for 4 years now, the entire time I've been with Palliser, and working through some very substantial health issues. And he's going through his diploma exams this past semester. It's going really well. So. All
right, good to hear. And again, online studies, so forth. Is there any challenges to actually monitor their progress to see how they're doing? Is that a bit more difficult or no?
Absolutely. When we talk about attendance, regular schools are looking at attendance and bodies in front of them every single day. We talk about attending to learning. So over the span of 1 week, we want to make sure that those students are logging into our learning management system. And we can see the tracks, or we can see the logs of how often they're logging in, how much time they're spending in their classes, how many clicks they essentially have as they're going through, and time spent on pages. So we can see, when they tell mom and dad, yeah, I've been into class. Yes, you did. You clicked one link, and then you went off to play video games. Or we can see, are they grouping it up on weekends or spreading it out over the week? So one of the things we look at is that those login informations. Then we also look at submissions. All of my teachers have, consistent assessments. So not just, the big high stakes exams at the end of the units, but assessments throughout their units that students can connect in. So how often are those coming in? How are we seeing, what's the quality of work that we're seeing from there? And then finally, how often are they connecting with their teachers, right? Like I said before, Paul, we expect at least once a week that they are going to communicate. If it's not through a live session, then through chat or email. And so we look at attendance and attending to learning as a 1 week sort of perspective. And we report that attendance over the span of a week. We get a lot of our students say, hold on, I was in biology at my school, and you marked me absent for that class. We say, no, we didn't see you for the whole week. So you might have been biology in your school, but we want to see you a little bit more often. And so, yeah, generally,
the personal interaction there with the teachers can make a big difference, right? I think we all look back and go like, man, there's that one teacher who really encouraged me and made a difference in my life, right? So, hey, so for people watching now might be thinking, maybe my child would do well with this, right? So how do they enroll their kid in this?
The easiest way is to go to our website, palliserbeyondborders.ca. And just fill in a registration. What we do for all of our registrations is my admin assistant puts together a little intake form. We look at their academic history. We take a look at sort of some of their needs. And then I set up an appointment with every one of our new students where we have a conversation about what their academic goals are. For some students, it's a single class. For other students, it's a more developed program. And so we have those conversations and we make sure during that meeting that our program fits the students' needs and the students able to fit our expectations. And if it doesn't match up, if the students don't feel that this is the right thing for them, it's okay at that point for us to say, you know what, let's part ways. We can make suggestions for other programs that might work, but we're happy to have those students then engage in our classes, get started with our orientation that I was telling you about before to make sure academics is forefront and technology is not getting in the way. And they can also call our office, right? 403-345-4421. And they can get more information that way too.
And you'd mentioned that you've got people from around the world. So if you live outside of the Palliser School District, you can still participate as well?
Absolutely. We, part of Alberta Education's mandate is to make our program available beyond just Palliser. Yeah, students from outside of Palliser are welcome within Alberta. When we start to look at international students and students who are outside of Alberta, there are some changes and there's some adjustments and conversations that need to be had. One is we do need to charge some fees out there because we're not getting funding for those. But absolutely, we have a young student who's actually playing WHL down in the US, and he's taking classes through us as well at this time. So it's wonderful.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for being with us today, Jason. Appreciate it.
Paul, thanks for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our program.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Jason Kwasny, he's the principal of Palliser Beyond Borders, a school based out of Coaldale, Alberta. I'm Paul Arthur. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.